Okay, good afternoon, traders. Here we are, VTP Stage 2 online, technical Tuesday, coaching call 190 for the 28th of April, 2026. I hope you're well. I hope you've had a good start to the week. Hope you're intrigued by the moves we're seeing in markets at the moment. As always, there's plenty for us to talk about. As always, you are very welcome here. Just remember that you are responsible for your own trading decisions. Okay, so let's have a look at what the STAM sheet was showing up this weekend when I got round to doing it on Saturday morning. What was kind of intriguing, as once again, interestingly, momentum is all very much bullish. There's an awful lot of green there. In fact, I can't remember, when we had a week where, it was only green, there was no selling STAM environments, which is kind of very strange for me there. But equally, also look at all of these weekly charts. Okay, look at all of these, and a huge amount of spinning tops. All right, huge amount of spinning tops. Bang, we'll look at that in a moment. But that is just giving you an indication that everybody's last week everybody took a bit of profit and everybody's pulled the reins in, all the big boys, in front of this major week. Okay, and this is one of the reasons I still do it by hand. Okay, because the STAM plugin doesn't show you that. All right, it'll show you what the STAM environment is, but it is only by going through it that I start to look at, right, well, what are the weekly possible setups that are going on? And as you can see, some weeks there's very little. Other weeks it's like this, where you've got a huge amount of dojis spinning tops. That in itself is telling you something. Okay, market is always communicating to you. It is your job to understand and to realize what it's telling you. Okay, that's the important thing. So as I said, lots going on there. Okay, to sit up and take notice of in front of this big major week. When we looked at the overall STAM worksheet itself, well, we're into week 18 of the year for the 27th of April. Where's the strength and where's the weakness? Aussie dollar, okay, has worked its way back to the top of the pile. That is kind of probably pretty much aligned with a good bit of the sort of risk-on, war-off sentiment that we had. For most of last week, and that's kind of done well out of that. We've also seen things like copper, pushing its way to highs as well. That also has a huge impact upon the Aussie dollar as well. Interestingly, we had sterling into second place. All right, so considering a couple of weeks ago it was at the bottom of the place. So there's a couple of reasons for that. There is one is a case of, in that kind of war off risk on, dollar got dumped. And, for those of you on the dollar edge sessions or following the dollar, of course, as soon as we went war off, risk on, dollar got dumped. And so everybody else did well just out of the fact of the dollar getting dumped. Furthermore, what you also have is you've got political shenanigans going on in the UK. This morning I've been sat watching Barton and McSweeney there, in front of the Public Affairs Committee, sort of sweating for their, political lives, if not their actual lives. And that has an impact on the political state of the UK. We also have this afternoon, I think there's going to be a vote on whether the Prime Minister basically has to be, whether he has to be referred to the other committee, it's called the Parliamentary Preferences Committee. I'll probably correct, I've got that wrong, but basically it's if he's misled, if he has misled Parliament. So the thing is, the reason that has an impact on sterling is if you look at gilts, British government bonds, the yields of those have basically rocketed up, as the price of those have gone down. And of course, that then has an impact on UK decisions, as in the Bank of England may have wanted to cut interest rates. But if the yield on government debt is going higher and higher, and I think it was about 5% again earlier this week, well, it becomes very hard to cut interest rates. And if anything, you might be forced to raise them. And of course, if you're raising interest rates, that's good for the currency. And so despite the political shenanigans, that is weirdly good for sterling strength. You've got no confidence in the parliament, but, big carry traders don't really care. They'll just basically put their money where they think they can get the easiest return on it. So that's why we see that with sterling. Okay, Japanese yen was 8 and still kind of stays there in spite of they had the Bank of Japan meeting overnight. Okay, they didn't hike rates, but they are talking about it is likely to happen. I don't consider myself a yen specialist, but I do know that they're in a strange position that actually they're not really. They're kind of the interest rates need a rate hike, but I'm not actually sure that they can afford a rate hike, and I'm not entirely sure the Americans can afford a rate hike, because if it becomes, and this is what we're seeing, if it becomes the interest rate becomes the equivalent of what US are offering for their treasuries, well, then what you're going to find is Japanese and all those Japanese housewives, they're just going to keep their money in Japan rather than using it to buy US treasuries, and that starts to cause issues as well. So, yeah, it's interesting times. Interesting times. Euro, Swiss franc were in there middling. Swiss franc had rolled over a bit. Canadian dollar had kind of held on to that third position. What we had seen overnight was yesterday we saw dollar weaken because the Iran had put forward a new proposal, and then overnight that kind of proposal seemed to be not much use, and Trump didn't like it and was very volatile or very vocal about it. And invariably, what that had, of course, then is war on, risk off, and so hence why this morning's session, what we saw was a lot of dollar strength with others weakening against it. With regards to indices, and I covered this quite a bit on yesterday's Monday Market Update, and you can always watch the videos or the snippets of that. In spite of all the world geopolitical issues, we had three of the American indexes pushing to new all-time highs last week, along with the Nikkei that pushed as well. FTSE is a little bit forlorn compared to those, and Dow is just tickling the soft underbelly of 50,000, or it was in yesterday's afternoon session. What is kind of probably interesting is that oil, gold, and silver are all out of STAM, but Bitcoin is in STAM 2 Bravo. All right, you might want to just look at that on the daily chart to see how that's playing. When we look at the updated STAM, what's this telling us? Is it giving us any, any conflict, or is it supporting it? Well, it's still supporting Aussie dollar, okay, as top of the pile. A lot of that is also those 4-hour charts, okay, are very strong. You've got Canadian dollar, okay, in second because of the 4-hour charts, and then you've got sterling in third, okay. So basically, sterling and Canada have swapped places in that sense. And a lot of that is kind of a little bit of weakness in sterling. Sterling has been mixed this morning because it's been volatile and scatty in front of those affairs committees. I'm just looking at it now over my shoulder, and it's, it has been, certainly against dollar and others, it's been sold off, etc. So work with that. Yen remains weak. Dollar is kind of working its way up because look at the 4-hour chart on that strength there. That's what you're looking at there. In terms of the STAM focus, all right, if you just want to focus on a couple, you had Aussie yen, Aussie dollar, pound dollar, all right? So they were all buys there. But I think, as I've said for the last week or two, I would just be treading carefully there at the moment because we're getting such volatility swings based upon Iran, and the impact upon that that you just want to tread carefully there, okay? Tread carefully this week. There's so much going on.